serve, receive, what they're passing by each rotation, what players are passing. I think finding the person that you can serve is a pretty important thing. And then what rotations are. So, as you go around and you're teaching these kids, you can get into a little bit of nuance here, and I'll give you just a couple things that we would look at maybe at the high school or club level. Certain rotations or certain players are going to dictate that people side out at a really high level. Certain teams that you play are always going to start their best attacker in left front, or they're always going to have one of the two players pass half the court, or in certain rotations, they're just really good at siding out, and in other rotations, they're not so much. So identifying that, maybe you don't have the information going into it, but by the end of game one, you're going to be able to figure that out. Certain club teams and certain college teams have a tendency to always start in the same spot. They're going to start the same way. And that's an advantage that you can certainly exploit by knowing what they're going to do and why they're going to do it. And just a basic chart of what rotation they're in. If you're siding out, if you're not siding out. UCLA, Al Skates of UCLA had a really basic system that basically just had a box. It was 6 boxes. They're serving the ball. If they side out, it's a dot. They miss a serve, it's a dot with a circle around it. And if you scored a point, it was just the number of the point that you scored. So, whatever rotation, 4, 5, and 6 you scored. And you can get a pretty quick visual of how the team's siding out and what they're doing. And you can get that done pretty quickly. And trends will develop if you keep those sheets. If you play the team multiple times during a year, you're going to find out if they're staying in the same spot, doing the same stuff, running the same plays and stuff like that. I think every club team and high school team has an intention to want to run a whole bunch of specific stuff. I think if they can't pass the ball, that's not happening. So, a lot of the college teams spend a lot of time on serving. I think that's an important thing to do. Players, they're predictable, and they have very specific tendencies, especially at the club level. The problem scouting, when I coached at Penn State, Krista was playing at Washington. It's hard to have scouting reports when the player has all the different tools. So I could say, hey, let's take away line from Krista. Well, she was over top of us. Or let's take away cross. She'd hit the ball line. Take away line, hit the ball cross. Stay deep. She had a cut roll shot. So the better the player you go up against, the harder it's going to be with tendencies, but not at the club and the high school level. So it's ironic. If you watch them warm up, if a coach is tossing or a setter's hitting and you're watching a left side player, 9 times out of 10, they're going to hit the shot one first couple balls in warm up that they're going to hit between 20 and 25 of a match. It's kind of their safe spot, their sweet spot. They want to be safe late in matches where elite players are going to want to move the ball around a little bit more. And I think that's just something to note. And you can break it up by position. So, Krista's going to talk about ownership. You can have your outside hitters, watch their right side players in warm up. You can have the middles watch the middles, and you can have your opposites watch the outsides, your setter watch the outsides, and just say, hey, what does it look like they do? What does it look like they want to do? What's their natural this? What's their natural that? I'll get to this with the pro stuff in a second, but certain players are really good when they get to pass to attack. Certain players it's 50-50. They're okay. Certain players are, if you serve them, they're in real trouble because they have a hard time combining those skills. I think with outside hitters, that's good to know. We'll talk in the pro stuff a little bit. When I was talking to Matt, he said they made an easy decision. If they were going to serve the outside hitter, it's that whole coaching thing. Do you serve the best player or do you starve them? Do you give them all the reps possible or do you give them no reps and you try to keep it all away? He said what they looked at was the basic numbers. And if the numbers were the outside hitter is pretty good, whether they pass or not, they're going to try to take away a different option. So serve a ball at the back row outside and maybe take away the back row attack. Serve a ball to someone else and see if you could eliminate that option. And those are things I think even at the club or high school level that you can do that can turn points. So, we'll start to transition here a little bit. I think for the players that you have that are going to make the jump to college or they're looking at playing even as they go up through the club system, there's a whole bunch of ways to skin the cat. I think that as a club athlete, you want them to have a basic knowledge and understanding that there's going to be a game plan, that you're not just going in and playing every single team the same way. I think there are some systems in the States where that happens, but there's still going to be tweaks. And within your system, there's going to be tweaks. So the gold medal squared folks are going to be very, very rigid's not the word, but they have a very distinct system. I think you got to be able to make some changes. We played BYU in the Elite Eight, I want to say 2007, and our middle blocker at the time at Penn State was hitting 800 on the wide slide, and it was fast and it was to the antenna, and she was bouncing balls. And they would not come out of this bunch as a blocking system. They just wouldn't do it. It wasn't built for it. They were like, this is what we do. This is what we believe. So we ran stuff fast to the pins, and the match was over in 45 minutes, and we were moving on to a Final Four. And I think those are the times when you look as an opposing coach like, hey, you might want to make an adjustment. You might want to get out of the bunch just for that attacker. Or defensively, if a kid's hitting the ball in the same spot. I mean, we're not the smartest people as coaches, but I like to put people where the ball gets hit to. And I think that's one of the things that's great about gold medal squared is they sit a player in the middle of the back court and say, hit balls here. Balls go there a lot. So I think stuff like that when you're talking to your kids, I think matters. I think just in the interest of time, I'm going to transition a little bit here to college scouting reports. So we're going to let you behind the curtain a little bit. I'm going to show you something, and then I'm going to shut up and let Krista go to work. I'm going to share my screen here. And show you a little bit, hopefully. I'm not sure if this is working. Is it working?
No.
Maybe. Hold on. Okay, cool. Everyone see that? Just give me a thumbs up.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, cool. All right, so this is us playing Texas. Maybe I should start with the first sheet here. This is us playing Texas 20. I don't know what the hell year it is. I have it here. Hold on. And this is one of Russ Rose's scouting reports. So this is Texas in September of 2013. So gives you a super visual representation. He's all a paper and pen guy, and it makes Krista laugh because she's looking at it and she's like, man, we got computers now. But this was at the top of this, and you can't really see it. He just talked about 4 or 5 points about the opposition. And then if you look by rotation, let me just give you an easy rotation to look at. So you look at something like this. This would be the setter was circled, so this would be rotation 5. So you had 23 and 1. One up here, you know, this is his lines of where she likes to hit and what she likes to do. So on the wide slide, she hit line. On the what they call the yee or the tight slide, she hit more seam. Then the outside hitter on the 4 ball high outside was cross court. On the inside rip or the 3, it was whatever. And then the setter, he's like, hey, she tips this way and this way. So it was funny. And this is the one that's going to get even funnier. Like, this is the kind of detail he would throw at us. And this would be given to the team day of. All right. And I always asked him, I'm like, listen, you know, all of these numbers, if you look at someone like Haley Eckerman was a hell of a player. You know, 6'3" outside hitter, key attacker, point scorer. We got that. She served from middle back. She's error prone at times. Best attack is hand wrist away. These were the numbers. So it would be, she's hitting 171, about 6 attempts a game. You know, her blocking and digging numbers were relatively irrelevant. But when you're in the 6 and 7, Bailey Webster was getting 7 attempts a game. That was a kid we had to be pretty aware of. But this is what it used to look like. This is what I grew up on. You know, my hope now is I can stop sharing and let Krista take the conch here and show you what we've graduated to.
Yeah, so like Coach said, I'm not really into the pen and paper type deal. I'm much more computer savvy, I guess. When it comes to scouting reports, it's just a little bit easier to read and understand without the full explanation. I'm glad Steve gave me that explanation because now I know what Coach Rose was talking about, because when I first saw, no idea. But we talk a lot about the accountability piece and the ownership. So right now with our team, I gave them a match. We have this program called Volumetrics. It basically has every college match and even some professional and international matches that our girls can have access to. And they can go on and watch any game from the last maybe 3 years. And so I gave our team this last week, Illinois versus Northwestern from this past season, and I had them scout it. And I wanted to know what they thought about, you know, had the outsides in a group on a Zoom, and I thought, okay, well, how do we stop the wide? What do you guys want to do? Who are we serving in this rotation and why? And so I think when players understand the why, it makes understanding, like, doing the skill a lot easier. And so I'll share my screen with you, and I'll just show you the scouting report that we have that we would show and give to our team a couple of days in advance. So our week kind of preparation. So if we have, a Monday off, we would go Tuesday, Wednesday. We're really worried about us and what we need to do to be better going into the next weekend. And then, Thursday, we start to really focus on the team that we're going to play first in the weekend. So, if we're playing Oregon State first, we go into a drill we call prepare to block. And we basically run their offense at our defense and prepare our blockers in each rotation, kind of what they're after and what the team wants to do. So this is kind of what we would start talking about on that Thursday going into the match. So we have Coach Steve kind of gives us 4 to 5 things to kind of focus on going into the match. So, we played Oregon State really early this year, played them at 10 a.m. in the morning. So we wanted to, start quickly to, kind of catch them off guard a little bit. And we kind of run through their system, what they like to do, just some key points that our kids can kind of read up on and give coaches thoughts on the opponent. And we kind of go into individual players and what their kind of stats are at the time, kind of 4 or 5 key points about each kid. And here it's really hard to see, but we pulled this little stat from Volumetrics. I'll see if I can zoom in a little. But it basically just has her distribution that she likes to run. And we're able to kind of see where she likes to set more. They only set 18 sets behind, et cetera. They only played 2 matches before they played us. So that stuff's kind of irrelevant that early in the season. But we wanted to get our girls kind of used to that. So we talk through, 4 or 5 points about each kid and the position that they're playing. We pull these kind of shot charts, just their general tendencies like Coach G was talking about. And we're able to kind of know what their their favorite shots are. And we do go through the middles, opposite, their libero, and then any DSs or subs they'll throw in. We will also kind of go through them in case they have a tricky serve or they do something different. That's something we'd want our players to kind of take note of. And then as we go through, we'll show each of their side out rotations and the patterns that they're running in each rotation. So it's kind of hard to see, but here in row 1, we have a go, we have something in the middle here, so a 31 or a gap, and then we have a jet ball behind. And that's their normal rotation 1. They have a variating rotation 1 where they're outside or the opposite here will come and hit a 2 ball, a 31, and then a jet. And it's just knowing and showing our right side blockers, hey, they might bring this girl inside, make sure you're not blocking a ghost out here at this antenna because there's no one hitting there. And it just gives a basic representation of, what each rotation looks like when the setter's front row and the setter's back row. Do they have a back row attack? Those kinds of things. And then we'll know as a staff what the tendencies are for who they're wanting to set when. And so we don't necessarily need to tell our girls that. We'll keep that kind of for us so we don't overwhelm them. But we like to know that, like, they're setting 50% go in this rotation. We know that's what they want to go do. And so that's something we will keep on the bench and make sure we communicate to them when necessary. And then if we keep going, we show kind of what our offense is going to be versus their defense. So I pull screenshots of what their defense looks like against various attacks and kind of show what would be open in those situations. So this is obviously, they were able to get a double block up. So it kind of shows that this area, the middle of the court, is kind of wide open. And that just shows our outside hitters, hey, like if I'm in trouble, a tip roll to the middle of the court is going to cause a lot of chaos for them. And then kind of just key objectives for our setters to look at. The setter's front row, we want to go at her. She's undersized. Middles, we'll kind of front our middles. So we want to isolate, meaning we'll want to run a 31 or a gap and then set a jet behind, likely to be one-on-one there. It can get really complicated, but we try to just give our setters a quick look into what our objectives are going into the match. And kind of explanations about each one. And then lastly, we talk about their servers. And so we'll go through and watch each kid serve. And if there's anything particular they do, if there's they have a short serve, this is a jump topspin server, which we don't see that much in the women's game now. but that's something we'll want to note. And this kind of gives kind of general tendencies. Okay, well, if she's serving from zone 1, she's probably serving cross court, and by same thing from zone 5. But that's something that we kind of want to do. But a lot of our players will watch film with them, and a lot of them will watch film on their own as well, so they kind of have a good idea of what's going to happen. Another thing, I'm trying to think of what else. What did I miss, Coach Steve? Anything?
No, I think it's really good. Obviously, when you guys are looking at this, there's a truckload to unpack, and we have a pretty full staff working a lot to generate a lot of things. We also have the luxury of having a whole bunch of time to prepare for matches traditionally. So in the preseason, it's hard because we'll play 10 a.m. and then 7 p.m. and it's a quick turnaround. But when we get into the conference, you usually have a match, especially if we go Wednesday, Saturday. We have 2 or 3 days to prepare. Krista, before we get back to that, just 2 or 3 things I think that are important. We want to present information to the kids, not opinions. So I want to tell them, hey, the majority of the time when this happens, this is what we believe is going to happen. It's happened on film. We're showing you the film. We're preparing for it. I look at it a lot, not just because I love this city, but I look at this a lot like Las Vegas. All right. We're just trying to help the probability of us having success. So we believe in these situations, and that's what Krista will tell them, like, hey, in this situation, if our setter's front row and we're serving them, we think they're going to run this play to try to exploit our setter. And at the highest level, everyone knows what everyone else is going to do, and it just comes back to execution. So we want to present information, not opinion. We want the team to take ownership of it. So Krista alluded to that. We want to give them film. The best players I've been around want the most information. All right. Let me tell you a good, quick story. When you take over bad programs, and I've done it plenty. When I first got to Maryland, we had a kid a month and a half into it. What they didn't know is we could track how much film they were watching on their iPad. So about a month and a half into the season, I say to the team, listen, I'm not trying to be a bear here, but the program's not that good yet. And we need you guys to really start learning how to scout and be aware of stuff. So the next day I come in, my assistant at the time says, it's amazing. Player X, she watched 6 hours of film. I was like, no way. So I'm pretty fired up. I'm like, hey, maybe we turn the corner. The old win one for the Gipper speech. So her roommate tells me that at 10 p.m. she presses play on the iPad. She went out to the club. It was Wednesday night. She was out till 4 o'clock in the morning. So she gets back. She was a little furry. The next day, a little blurry. Didn't know what was going on. If players don't care, it doesn't matter. When I showed you Russ's scouting report, it's overwhelming for a kid the day of. But his approach was always give as much information you can to the smartest possible kid that you have that might know the most stuff, that can retain the most stuff, and they're going to be able to help as the match goes on as well. So you want the ceiling of it to be super high. And I'll get to that when we get the pro game. I'll talk to you a little bit about that. So the individual accountability is key, and then they better trust the staff. So if you have a game plan and you have all this information and they come out and the other team is doing the opposite, or they start in a totally different rotation, or they're running something, they're going to look at you, they'll look at us and be like, God, you guys didn't know what you were doing. So you have to, as a staff, have some credibility with that. Like, hey, this is what we think they're going to do. And then they do it. Krista, can you just talk for 1 second about the jump from being a player in high school and club? And, your club team was a lot of just set you the ball. So it was probably a observation you made coming in, it was going to change. What was the most difficult part about that?
I want to touch on one thing you said too. We could spend all this time making these scouting reports and doing all these things, and then once their best player doesn't dress for the match, then the scouting report goes, in the garbage. And that's when we have to rely on the players to know, to trust their volleyball IQ. And I think that's where you guys help us, is when you teach them, okay, with the setters like this, we know she's going to set back or something like that. And that's where you guys can kind of help, and the player themselves has to take accountability to know, or if the set's tight, they're going to tip or whatever you guys can think of. But, we can do all of these scouting things, but if the player can't see the game, then it makes it kind of hard in general. And then coming from the club side, we didn't scout anybody in club. I think we just went out and played. And I think maybe we scouted one time, and it was going into the the final and open when I was in 18s, but it was the one time, and I'm like, we've played Laguna 94 times. Why are we scouting them now? But we did, and I think the biggest thing for me going into college was learning how to watch film. And I had no idea. Didn't do it a lot in club, didn't do it a lot in high school, but learning how to watch film and what I should be watching to stop watching the ball, or, just watching the ball fly in film, and I should be watching what the players themselves are doing, or what I'm doing if I'm watching myself. That was something I had no idea about. And then, like I said, kind of just knowing what to watch. What am I paying attention to? And I think position by position that can vary, and skill by skill. So if we're watching their serve receive patterns, it just really depends on what you're trying to focus on. But those were the two biggest things I think coming out of club that I didn't really know. And the game is a lot faster, so being able to just be as prepared as possible, I think is good going into college.
That's awesome. One last thing about the college thing, I really think it makes a difference. I think the good staffs in the country can help 3 to 4 points a game. And, we're a young staff at Indiana. We're getting better. When I was at Penn State during the start of the run, when we won 4 in a row, I felt that was a unique, kind of a unique selling proposition. Is when it got to 20 up, we felt pretty good. The kids knew that we were as prepared as anyone in the country. We had done a really good job all week getting people ready and prepared. Obviously, we had really good players, and I'll get to that in a second. But I think if they trust the staff, they trust the coach, especially at crunch time. The staffs can be good that's how you can affect it. As a coach, as a club coach, as a high school coach, if you're diligent with 3 or 4 things, you can really switch a match. You can win some tight games because you guys are dialed in. So that's that. I'll just take you through a couple more things here. We'll talk about the pro game. And I think this spills over to the college game as well. I think some players want 3 or 4 big rocks. Hey, I'm an outside hitter. This is your matchup against this kid. Let's have her not hit the ball down the line. You're going to seal the line. If you're in trouble, cut roll shot to the middle. When you get back to serve, let's keep it off the libero. Basic stuff. I was laughing with Rob the other day because you can say don't serve the libero. It's like, don't think about a pink elephant. The first thing you do is think about a giant pink elephant. The kid just drills it at the libero. Its life goes on. Welcome to coaching. It happens at college. It happens in the pros. It is what it is. But 3 or 4 things I think is good. When I talked to Matt today, and again, just for the people latecomers, Matt Anderson's the captain of the men's national team. He said he wants 1 or 2 things. He wants to be able to play free, but he wants 1 or 2 things to think about, and that's it. Conversely, Max Holt, David Lee, the middle blockers, they want every single number possible. They want all of the information. They want as much film as possible. I asked Matt when he was the most prepared in his pro career or national team career. He said it was before the World Cup in 2015 because they had a 28-day lead up to the event. And he said he was so pissed off because it was just film every day. And he's like, but I knew all the stuff. I felt really, really prepared. None of us have that kind of time, and we have to have a quick turnover. But I think that's important. He wanted to play 2 or 3 things, simple, play free. That was that. And then teams can have 2 or 3 big rocks as well. So I'll give you an example. We're going to not serve the libero. We're not going to let them attack out of the middle. Anytime they have a perfect pass, we're committing. They're not going to be able to score out of the middle. That's just a team decision that we're making. Or, out of system, we're just going to manage errors. The other team's really error prone. Let's keep the ball in play. If you don't love it, keep it in, tip it, roll it. Let's just play volleyball. At the club and high school level, a lot of times you lose more than you get beat. It's service errors. It's hitting the ball out. It's, you guys know, double hits, you're in the net, and you give up 13 errors in a game, and you're like, man, yeah, we lost again. Well, no doubt. You're just hemorrhaging points like crazy. One of my favorite stats of all time was the 2012 national championship match. University of Texas won the championship. They were averaging like 2.7 errors per game. So someone would miss a serve, one person would hit a ball out, and they might be in the net, and that's all you're going to get. You had to earn every single point against them. And that's when teams get really, really tough. So finally, just to shut it down, number 1, we think it'll give players an advantage, your club kids, your high school kids. Anytime they're introduced to this at all, it's going to help them at the next level. It's going to help them immediately. Their knowledge of the game, Krista and I were talking about this, their volleyball IQ, even in this pandemic, is something they can be better at. They can be watching matches. Krista, what's 2 or 3 things you've given the team to, like our college team, to think about during the pandemic with scouting? Like,
Yeah, so I had them, like I said, watch an entire match and just scout, Northwestern. I actually gave them the assignment today to find 2 players in the world that they want to be like. And you guys will, Steve Haley Armstrong said she wanted to be like Dennis Rodman, and I said, no,
I respect that.
you're not allowed to be like Dennis Rodman.
Yeah.
Anyway, I said it had to be volleyball players, and it didn't have to be in their position, but it could be just someone they want to be like. And I wanted them to find 2 or 3 clips of that player playing. And kind of show us as a group next week. So I have kind of a week to figure it out. And I think I gave them I made a playbook, and it was just kind of everything that we want to do as a program and why we do it. And I kind of went through film and I showed them. It's a 33-page document or something like that. And they're able to go through and watch themselves. They can watch, other players in the conference. And that's something that's really unique. And I think with high school kids, you can go on YouTube and watch a lot of really high-level volleyball, high-level matches from around the world, not just NCAA, but, you can watch some of the best pro teams in the world play each other, and men, women. You could learn a lot as long as you kind of learn what to watch is kind of what I had to figure out coming out of college or coming out of club, sorry.
Right. So that's that film and technology we think helps a ton. The second big rock was think about the Las Vegas analogy. You want to be the dealer. So how do serving this player doesn't help you win the point per se automatically, but if it helps you 20, 30% more, do it. And then if you know where the ball is going to go and you can move people to where they're going to hit it and take away what they like to hit, probability goes up again. And that's just the way we want to look at it. We want to increase probability in each situation. And then at the end of the day, and we talk about this all the time, players win matches. You can have a great scouting report, doesn't matter. Players got to make plays. They got to do what they do. That's why recruiting for us is the number one thing. And then at the pro level, it's talent acquisition. In high school, it's kind of the area you got. In club, it's obviously that area. You can't have kids from British Columbia playing for you. So there's players in your area. And then, at crunch time, if you've got a kid who's, 8 inches over top of people, then, you can want to block line, block whatever. It doesn't really matter. So, okay, so we're going to shut up now and just take some questions. There's one, I think.
Yeah, we have one.
Okay, what's the question?
Is there similar benefit for players watching and stat in positions other than theirs? Doing stats on.
So, Krista, you want to take this?
Yeah, I think there is. I think you can learn. I mean, if I'm a middle, I want to know, I wanted to know. I was similar to the Max Holt idea. I wanted to know every person's tendencies, the whole thing, so I could be the one to help if other people were lost and confused. But I think if I'm a middle and I'm learning, I'm watching. I mean, I can watch serve. I think serving is huge. You can watch any position of player serve. I think if I'm a middle, I want to watch the outside hitters and the best outside hitters in the world because, they're going to hit shots that I don't see a lot in my gym maybe. And I can watch and learn how does this middle defend that left? So you're kind of watching multiple positions at once. And if I'm an outside hitter and I want to become the best passer I can, I'm going to watch liberos pass. I'm going to watch, liberos defend. I'm going to see what they're doing. And even same thing, if I'm an outside, I want to watch middle blockers block. Like they're the best blocker. If they're the best blocker in the world, I want to know what they do and why. And that's just something that I think the best players, like Coach said, want to learn and be, in touch with all of the different positions. And I think that goes along with volleyball IQ too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I just think that, and you never know in college if your role is going to change. I think some people think they're a middle and they become a something. I think we like to recruit generalized specialists. We want people that can do all the skills and be able to play the game. And, Kate Price played for me at Penn State. She was the Big Ten freshman of the year as an outside hitter as a freshman. And in 2013 or 2007, whatever year it was, she was a DS and a main passing. That's just what she did. She became a back row kid. So I think the more your kids get to touch and feel, see and think, liberos get better by understanding what their middle is going to do, or their middle's making big drops into seams. And, all of that stuff matters. There's a whole nother tier of this. And I think all of you guys, because if you're on this Zoom, you like volley and you like to talk about volley, and we could go into, if a setter jumps off of the left foot and does X, she's going to do Y. And yeah, listen, I mean, there's at the highest level, people spend a lot of time doing stuff. If you've got really talented kids, at the end of the day, it's their ability to read it. You can tell them what's going to happen, but then the ball's round. It has no brain. It's going to do weird stuff. They've got to be able to learn and adapt and feel and make plays. And we think that's really important we want them prepared. We don't want them paralyzed. We want them to know what we want them to do, but then they've got to be athletes and make plays. Anyone want to go off mute and holler at us? Rob, you got to have at least a question, man. I can't let you guys.
Sure. No,
Okay.
I'm actually curious. I'll just say it like what was told to me. Tim Laux is the women's coach at McMaster, and he was just saying part of the problems they were having is, not want to say the problems. The men's team would go to a 3-hour practice, and then they go home, they do homework, and then they're watching pro volleyball for 2 or 3 hours. And he's like, but the women's program, it's like they're done. And, and he's just like, he's been trying to overcome that. And I'm just, you guys, you talked a little bit about it. How do you get the kids to spend more time on video watching this stuff? You
can't. I mean, that's a terrible answer. It's the truth. I think you've got to care. I mean, it's like Krista said, she was the best player and still watched the most. You got kids on full scholarships in college that just don't have any interest in playing the game. But I think there's a correlation to winning with how much people care. And it's uncomfortable. I think one of the things is if you surround yourself with a bunch of people who really care, the median group will be pulled towards the kids who actually care. I think if the staff really cares, there's a rub-off effect of people like, man, they're spending a lot of time. They really want me to have success. I think that matters. I think the culture, culture is such a overused word right now, and it's hard to do in a season in high school and in club. You guys got to deal with parents and all that craziness. And if your kid really wants to play, it's the kind of kid who wants to play at 10 o'clock in the parking lot. And they just love volley. And if volley's on, they're going to watch it, and they wake up and they're thinking about it. And that's the kind of people you want to recruit for sure. We talk about it all the time. Like if your finish line is making it to college and you're not so interested in getting better, Krista and I are on stuff like this all the time trying to learn. We go to coaches conventions and client. We're trying to learn. We know we don't know a lot. We're trying to get better and better and better. And then if you can find the kids who feel the same way, Rob, or at least expose it to them and say, this is what it's going to be like if you want to have success. You can't be a 2-hour-a-day kid. You can't show up to club practice, train for 2 hours and think magically you're going to have success or arrive at the next level. It's got to be a lifestyle.
Steve?
Yeah.
A question about middle blocking. Because I've watched quite a bit of and been around a lot of NCAA volleyball.
For sure.
And with all the stats and tendencies and everything else that you have, I know that a lot of coaches have complete control of their middle blockers. Do you control your middle blocker? Or do you just let them play free? Within reason, of course. Yeah,
that's a good question. It's good to hear your voice, Paul. I think it's funny. I was watching and talking to Kevin Hambley, who's the coach at Stanford. And we were talking about his blocking system, and it's kind of this bunch read system. And he basically said, middles are going to torch us. They're going to get a bunch of kills against us. We're not going to work on, hey, we have to stop the middle. If a middle is going off against us, it's a serving problem. All right. Russ used to say that too. If someone bounced a quick on us and our middle wasn't there, he would be like, listen, don't get mad at the middle. Get mad at the fact that you served a marshmallow and the kid just passed it perfect and they could do whatever they wanted to do. A lot of the systems in college right now, Paul, you see the middles will start with their hands high. You guys know this, good pass, higher hands, better the pass, higher the hands. And as soon as that ball is at 6, 8, 10, 12 feet off the net, the hands just drop. And you want your kid to be athletic and make the first step towards where the ball goes. The middle is the most dangerous position to over-program. And you see kids false step a lot and guess because they're guessing and guessing and guessing. I think the best middles we've been around, see ball, get ball. It's kind of caveman volleyball. We know that the tendencies are like, hey, we know the ball is probably going left here. The pass is to 15 feet. I'm just going to drop my hands and I'm ready to go. But they're not going to give up that position if it's a bick or a back set or something else happens. They're just very instinctive and very athletic. The other side of that, for obvious reasons, is the better your scouting is and the more predictable your opponent is. You have teams that'll just send their blockers out and stand there. So the ball gets past the 15 feet and you'll see the middle just release and stand at the pin. A lot of people now are teaching swing blocking moves, and you see it a lot at the club and high school level. You want to wait and kind of load up, and, it's right, left, right, and you're pressing when they're about to hit, and you think there's a seam and it goes away. I think it depends on the system that you want to run. Blair Brown played for us at Penn State. Russ wanted her to stand at the antenna. His line was, "Don't get beat line ever." And we knew that was just not going to happen. She was 6'5", and no one's going to hit line. They can't tip over where it wouldn't be easy to track it down. And that, as an opponent, you're like, okay, we don't have that option anymore. That goes away. So I think all of those things come into play. I also think it depends on the kid you have. Final Fours I was in with the Penn State middles, we would go through all the scouting, and literally every time we served a ball, they would look over and be like, "What do you want me to do?" And that was every single time. And Russ was like, "You got to play the match for them. Like, tell them what's probably going to happen. Tell them exactly what the scouting report was going to be. Give them the information again." And you guys have a lot of kids like that. Krista, you had teammates like that. They're forgetful. Can you talk about that? I mean, you were in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, one of our, I think she was actually the statistical blocking champion in the NCAA my sophomore year, didn't know rotations. She was a middle 6'6", and she didn't, I had to, in camp, she was trying to teach the 12-year-olds rotations, and I had to sit down and literally draw them out for her. So she could teach the 12-year-olds, but she was the statistical blocking champion because she could read. And she wasn't even the most mobile human in the world, but she could read to the best of them. And so I think there were times when people would just have no idea what was going to go on. Or there was one story that's kind of funny. One of the opposites, I was a senior, she was a freshman, and we're playing UCLA, and Carstelo's on the outside, big lefty. And our opposite, so we were taught never to reach out towards the pin. We always wanted to reach back into the court as blockers. And she reached out, got beat, reached out, ended up stuff blocking her. They call a timeout, and I grab her by the jersey and I say, "Don't effing do that again," just because she made the wrong move, the wrong play, and it was going to cost us a point. And granted, she got lucky and did the right move, sort of, and got her. But she never lets me forget it. Anytime I talk to her, and even now, she's a pro beach volleyball player now, and she always reminds me, "Remember when you cussed me out and I'm like, "Yeah, I know, I'm sorry about that." But yeah, I had teammates that don't remember, and you just got to be up in it and just reminding. I had our libero when I was a freshman through a junior, knew every piece of every scouting report. And she's up against the blockers, talking to their team, telling everybody what they're going to do. And that stuff matters. It makes people better. And I think giving the scouting report to the smartest kid on the roster probably makes a whole lot of sense, because in those moments, they're the ones that are right there able to remind the people what they need to know.
Yeah. A lot of times your smartest kid might not play as well. The most invested kid might not play. You might have that one kid on your team who loves it, not as physically gifted, but guess what? She's in their ear on the bench at timeouts. She's going to, and she feels entitled. That's her role. And she feels entitled with that role, and she loves that role. And that's an important thing to remember. We can only have 6 people on the court at a time. And during timeouts, you can give them certain information. But if that one player that you've given that scouting information to remembers or helps, I think that's a really valuable thing. Paul, that was a 28-minute response, buddy. We were all over the map, but hopefully some of that resonated.
I'm okay with that.
Fair
We
enough.
have another question in the chat. A bit off topic. I will be coaching 15U girls next year, and one aspect I would really love my girls to work on is their mental toughness, serving that game point serve and feeling competitive rather than fully nervous during the game, for example. Any tips?
Yeah, it's tough. Experience is something you wish you had after you needed it. Being in big matches and being in those situations, there's no real way to reproduce it or replicate it. I think what a lot of coaches will put them in drills. We play a lot of 18, 22, 23, all kind of stuff. We put people on the line. I think what in the club world, when I was out in California, used to have the team line up on the sideline, and there'd be a mat, serve the mat in zone 1, zone 5, whatever it might be. And if they hit the mat, the team didn't have to do X. And if you don't hit the mat, they were doing 5 push-ups, sit-ups, sprints. Trying to apply some type of pressure without killing them, I think is important. But I think Krista will agree with me. The more you play, put them in situations where they got to play. They got to feel what it's like to serve at 24 all or 13 all in the 5th game or the 3rd game, whatever it might be. Put them in those situations a lot. Either where they have to come back or they got to close a game out. The more they play 6-on-6 and they have the feeling of they've got to serve that ball at that time. Mental toughness is a tough thing, especially with young kids. You want them to enjoy it. You want them to have fun, and you want the punishments, so to speak, early in their careers to be more fun. And, they're all excited for the girl if they hit the mat. And then as they get a little bit older and you're kind of prepping them for college, we don't do a lot of kumbaya stuff. There's not a lot of, we're trying to go pretty hard for 2 hours and you recruit the right kind of kids, and that's what they're into. We got any other questions across? Hey, Kev.
I got a question for you, Steve.
Yeah.
Hey, Krista. So you touched on it a little bit when you were talking about, your time for preparation. You guys play Wednesday, Saturday, typically in the Big Ten. But I think realistic to our situation as club coaches, where we're in the tournament world, where our turnaround between matches is pretty quickly. Could you just talk a little bit more about what your between match preparation when you're in your preseason looks like a Friday to Saturday morning or Saturday morning to Saturday evening sort of?
Yeah, well, I'll talk about a club tournament maybe. So, 4 teams in a pool. You play at 8, 10, and 1 or whatever it might be. I think if you're playing the first match out of the gate and you haven't seen anyone, it's tough. But that second match, you're looking at the 2 teams and I think this is when it comes back to 3 or 4 big rocks. Try to find 3 or 4 things about the team you're going to play that make sense. Identify who the best players are. Have your kids watch them warm up hitting. What does it look like they like to do? Just kind of some of the stuff that we went over, the 3 or 4 basic things. And honestly, having that little bit of here's what we know we do. We train it all the time. Here's what they think they do and where they're going to start, we think. If they had a kid like Krista who always started left front, that's going to happen. And maybe you want to start in rotation 1 because your opposite is physical enough to handle it, and the matchup with the setter is a nightmare. So you don't want to start in row 4 and get your brains kicked in for those 3 rotations. Or she's going to kick your brains in anyway, so might as well start the setter there, and maybe you can win the other 3 rotations when your opposite's front row. Those are the little nuances that I think you can really control in the club world. And then you only have, not only do you only have a match maybe to prep it, you only have maybe 3 or 4 minutes to talk to your team before the match starts, where you've decided these are the 3 or 4 things that really matter to you. Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just think having your kids watch the matches in between, especially the ones that if you haven't played them quite yet, and I'm sure you guys do that, but I think getting them off their phones and actually watching or maybe even giving them some sort of like little worksheets they can fill out while they're watching too might help. I know I was a very visual person. If I write something down, I'll remember it. So, and I think a lot of kids are kind of like that these days. So if they write something down, maybe they'll remember 1 or 2 things. And I think accountability comes from it too. Like if you have time, I know sometimes you don't, but like, what did you guys see? What do you, and if it comes from them, maybe they're more likely to remember it too, instead of the coach just kind of dictating what to do. I think that might help as well too.
Yeah. Krista's taught me this, Kev. I wasn't very good at this when I made the transition. She's really helped me. I ask a lot more questions now than I've ever asked players. Before it was just, hey, this is do X. And now it's like, what did you see? What are you thinking? Tell me about what you were looking at. What were you focused on? I think having that stuff, I think, is pretty important. And as a player, Chris, Jim was great at that at Washington, about having those conversations. I'm not as patient or cerebral, so I'm a little bit more bar fight over scouting report. But that's always been the way I've gone about my business. But you can talk maybe a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I kind of mentioned it earlier, but it's a lot about the why for me. Like, at least for me, as a player, it was like, well, why are we doing it this way? And that's something you can ask the players too. Why did you hit that shot? What were you trying to do? And if they say what they think you want to hear, normally you can kind of tell, especially with 15, 16, 17-year-old girls. They're not really great at that whole trying to be persuasive thing. Well, and that's kind of what I asked. I mean, I'm kind of in charge of our outside hitters, and if it's you hit the ball 900 feet out of bounds. What were you trying to do? Well, I was trying to hit it off the top of the block and I just missed. Okay, cool. At least your thought process is in the right spot. And I think that's something that I learned a lot as a player. And I was like pretty cerebral, similar to the way my head coach was, but learning why and asking questions, I think, is really important. Even for the athletes, they should be asking you guys questions all the time. And we talk about it in camp all the time with the little 8-year-olds. If you don't ask questions, how are you supposed to kind of learn? And I think that's a really big piece of coaching in general.
It's a huge breakthrough as a coach where if it's a bad play, Kev, and you call a timeout, when the kids come back, your kid who's serving is like, man, I serve libero. I know that's not what you wanted. And the kid's like, I knew you wanted block line. I didn't get there. My bad. And they're telling you that they knew at least what the process was. And they can identify what they're being asked to do. I think that's a fantastic step forward.
Another one in the chat. Do you track your servers' effectiveness?
Yeah, it's hard. One of my favorite stats, high school stats we get all the time. We get about 100 or 150 emails a week from kids that want to play in college. And it's like, my serving percentage is 99%. And I'm like, that's fantastic. But the other team's siding out at 100%. So your serve's trash. So that's not a stat I'm all that interested in. I think, and it's tough because we have this debate a lot. Do we want our best servers serving into their toughest side out rotation when their best players left front? Do we want to put our best server against what we perceive to be their worst rotation and try to run points? I coached Micah Hancock. She was a pretty good jump server, and teams would line up their best serve receive rotation against her because they didn't want to lose the match if she got hot. But if Micah got hot, it didn't matter. And if she missed a serve, they lost the other 5 matchups. So there's a lot of different ways of doing that. I think, we talk a lot. We want them to serve tough. But aces are things that happen. They're not something that we're trying to do. We're trying to serve more seams now than people. I used to put down mats in the corners, and now I'm way more into putting mats in the seams of where people would be. Statistically, we think people get aces there more, and it keeps the ball in play more. And our number one rule of thought with serving is that if they cannot run the middle off of this serve that you put into play, you did your job. And that's that. And in the men's game, it's harder because these guys are banging jump serves and you win or lose based on that. In the women's college game, 90% of it is kind of jump float right now. I would say you get some standing floats and you get the occasional jump spin. But the whole goal is, can you get them into a 2-pass or worse, and that's it. And that's the stated goal for the team. If they're at 10 feet or 12 feet setting the ball, we got a really good chance to do some good stuff.
I think when it comes to efficiency, we look a lot at side out percentage of the other team and point scoring percentage on our end. But a lot of that too comes back to who's in the front row for us. If we have 4-6-4 blockers in the front row, of course we might point score at a little bit of higher percentages because, we have a huge block in front of us, whether we have, 3-5-8 kids and we're siding out or we're point scoring at 26%. Well, that makes a whole lot of sense. No matter how tough your serve is, doesn't necessarily matter. But we look a lot at that. I've been doing a serving study on float and location and things like that, and just knowing how the two kind of correlate into points is something that's been really interesting to look at. And so that's kind of how we would track serving efficiency, I guess. We're trying to keep the ball in 90% of the time and make good misses. So we always say missing into the bottom of the net's really bad. Missing out of bounds is even a little bit better than missing to the bottom of the net because a kid could touch it, shank it out of bounds, things happen. And we want to miss kind of into the seams. Like Coach said, we don't serve the sidelines a whole lot. We're trying to miss kind of towards zone 6, kind of into the seams to make those two passers have to deal with the ball more than just kind of right at somebody.
What are we saying now? We call it flean.
Flat and clean.
Cartridge thing is flat and clean. You just want to hit it flat and you want the ball to float. And if you can do those two things, keep it in the seam more than not, and force them in a 2-pass more than not. I think kids get worried that they have to go back there and produce points and score points. And I think that's important at times, especially if you've got someone who can beat the crap out of it and it's a real weapon. Then I would have them serve in rotations that you might not be as good defensively. And be okay if they miss. Be like, listen, they're siding out at 85% in this rotation. Take a crack at it.
Do you have any kind of speed measurements that you want them?
Yeah. And it's funny because Karch buried the radar guns because they were all about speed and velocity. There's a study, and it's a pretty good one, that says, and it's American miles per hour, but if they're hitting a jump float at about 40 or 42 miles an hour, that's about the top end of it. And then every mile per hour that it goes up from there, the missing goes incrementally up through the roof. So there's kind of a sweet spot where I've always been a big believer, especially when you play in the club events or the high school events or big buildings, to hit a jump float 75, 80%, let the ball do the work. And you can have a lot of success with the ball just dancing around and doing cool stuff. It stays in play more often than not. And you don't need to, I know everyone wants to hit it as hard as possible, but the harder you hit it, the more chance you're going to miss. And again, Rob, missing isn't a bad thing if the team's better than you, you should be a lot more aggressive from the end line. If you got the best team in the country, underhand serve the ball in and be like, let's play volleyball. You're not going to beat us. So I don't really mean that, but you understand where I was headed with it. Cool.
Matt's been working on her underhand, so you're going to be in good hands there.
That's cool. What's this one here? Serving drills set up differently than other skills in order. Can you read that, Bailey?
Do your serving drills set up differently than other skills in order to recreate serving conditions?
Yeah, so that's always been, for many, many years, we served for, 25, 30 minutes in a chunk. I think what we're trying to do now is we come in, we warm them up in practice. Maybe they serve for 5 minutes. We get in a drill, whatever the drill is. Then we serve for 5 minutes. We're trying to bring them back and keep their attention spans on it. We want them to feel what it's like to have to go through the routine. Coming out of water, going into water, if people want to stay and serve or come back early and serve, as many reps as possible as they can get. And then obviously reps against someone who's actually passing. So serving against the net is okay, but the more you can play volleyball, the better you're going to be at volleyball. We're lucky to have a couple courts in our training facility, and we'll do a lot of serve versus one passer, serve versus two passers. If you guys only have one court, you can do it on each side, kind of alternating serves. And then I think it's important to move the ball around and have it coming from different places, different speeds, different styles as much as possible. But it's something that every single coach should do more than we do. And no matter how much you're spending time on serving, you should do more.
Yeah, we'll do these, really high energy drills and then kind of slow it down and make them serve right after. So you kind of learn how to serve when you're tired. When you're breathing heavy, how to kind of control your breath and get your brain back into, serving mode and calm it down a little bit too. So that kind of helps kind of with the mental piece of it.
So, hey, Rob, listen, that's an hour. Yeah. If you guys want to contact Rob, or here's what I'll do. My email address, if you're writing stuff down, is just SAIRD, so SAIRD@iu.edu. Krista, what's yours?
I'm going to put it in the chat feature.
Oh, that's even smarter. Can you put mine? That's smart. Yeah. Look at you. And if any of you guys on this call want to send us a note, have a question, want us to send you a link on a match, anything that we can do to help you guys out, let us know. And that's a forever standing thing. That's just kind of how we roll. So, Rob, we appreciate this, man. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, really appreciate everything that you guys share with us. So
cool. I'm going to go have a beer.
Thanks, guys.
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Steve.
Cheers, guys. Good to see you. Good to talk to you.
Cool.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Maybe I'll get the Defensa coaches. We'll just kind of hang on for a few minutes here. Well, there we go. Mute. No, there I'm not. Okay, there I am. Some pretty cool stuff that they went through, and for the teams that are coaching 15, 16, 17, sorry, for the coaches that are doing 15, 16, 17, there is a feature on Huddle that you can see how much time kids are spending on. And so you can see how much time they spent doing videos. So last week, after the call with Greg, gave them a challenge, do some scouting work, watch yourself, and, be critical. And, instantly I could see some kids as of this morning, at least in terms of Huddle, had done nothing. but then there's other kids that were on for 3 and 4 hours. And I'm going to say the kid in 15U is not likely out at the bar, leaving the thing on, like what he's talking about. So, and I feel like that's something that's it kind of like some cool things right away I want to do with, you know, the athletes with 17 Purple. Watch a match and scout a match, you know, come up with a game plan. And I really like the whole who you want to be like. And just something that I'm going to throw at them, you know, if you're a middle, you know, exactly what Krista was talking about. Who do you want to, you know, who do you look up to? Who do you want to mimic your game? And I bet you there's kids in our program that have no clue. You know, I hope the setters know who Lauren Carlini is. She's one of the best setters in the world, but you know, like how do we get them to know this information? So, you know, I just feel like I struggle right now with sending out like ball control stuff. It's so hard. You're losing that team element. But then the volleyball stuff is how can we develop the IQ, which is another thing that they talked about. So anyways, that's something I'm just going to do, you know, probably pretty quickly with at least the 17 Purple team, throw it out there to them. So, yeah. Anyone pick anything up from that?
I thought it was really good. Yeah.
Great. You were saying?
Yeah. Rob, I'll share just in case any other coaches are interested and if you're still meeting with your teams. My girls, we met up last night. I kind of talked a little bit about the Wisconsin coach Zoom call. I kind of asked that they all watch that. And then we went into huddle and kind of just took a few plays and really slowed it down and kind of, you know, analyzed what was going on. And then I've challenged each of them to go into huddle and we're going to get back together next week and they're going to take over the Zoom call and analyze just a couple clips here and there just to really see if they actually understand how to slow it down. Because that was the one thing that they told me, like they've just never slowed down the game tape before and actually really watched positioning, looked at the hitter to see if they're tipping or hitting or watching the setter position, those things. So anyways, just kind of challenging them to do those things is some of them might not do it, but at least some of them will learn. I think it was interesting that Krista was saying like she didn't do that in club at all. She had no idea. So if we can give these guys a jump start on some of this stuff before they go into their post-secondary stuff, maybe it's a little different for you know, our 12Us and 13Us, but I don't think I was ever, I mean, I didn't watch game tape until university, but anyways.
Cool. Yeah, really just want to say hey everyone, that kind of a deal. So yeah, that was pretty much it. So I'm going to be meeting up with 15s, 16s, 17s this week. Going to be doing some spike tests for anyone who wants to do that. I did say to the kids who were doing like the jump training program. So I just want to be able to see how effective it was. And then I will get to the rest of the athletes as well. But just try to do this like in a little bit of a chunk at a time. And then we do have some other stuff that we used. I'm going to say, what was that before? Was that in December, Kevin, when you did the last spike test? Or was that January?
We only did like within Defensa. We only did it at the beginning of the year, in September. Like with Defensa, I think we took everyone like 14U and up. We did a spike test in it would have been like September, October.
Okay.
At Haber.
Yeah.
So those stats are listed on Sports Engine. Like if you go on to the actual team pages through Sports Engine, there's a place where you can see the stats and what everyone was touching then.
Yeah. It'd be just like a good little guide. It's just a way to be able to see some of the kids and to kind of get the kids together without being together. It'll be interesting tomorrow when I start doing this jump program, like making sure everyone's going to stay separated, all of that stuff. Get people to stay in their cars or buy their cars. I don't know.
You're going to have a harder time with the parents, I think.
Sounds like there may be some tailgating going on, but what else was I going to say? I lost it. It was probably good. You'll never know.
Both Rob and Kevin, I think these are great. Like, if you guys have the opportunity to set these up with coaches and for us to learn from them, I really enjoy it. So
yeah.
I totally agree. And for the girls as well, once they get a chance to watch the recorded videos, they can get a chance to see the coaches and understand what they're like and go, oh, maybe I like that coach better than that coach. So it's a great experience for them to actually meet the coaches without that pressure of, oh my God, what am I going to say or whatever that is, right? So
Rob, will this be available to the kids too? Like the last time, this recording, will they be able to play this back?
And I will. Oh, I should probably stop.
I was going to say, maybe stop recording right now.
oh, you got me drinking
boy, who did we
wine.
talk about?